The signal wasn't meant for humans, but they answered anyway. HFY Sci-Fi, the signal wasn't supposed to be detectable, at least, that's what the alien engineers of the Triandron hegemony had believed when they designed it. Broadcasted in a hyper-compressed frequency well beyond the capabilities of primitive species, the signal was intended as a beacon, a rallying call for their fleets to regroup after the war with the Malthran Confederacy. But they didn't anticipate humans. It started as a faint blip on a deep space observatory stationed in the Kuiper Belt. Drive. Elena Marquez, a leading astrophysicist and renowned skeptic, was sipping lukewarm coffee when the anomaly pinged on her monitor. At first, she thought it was a glitch, just another instance of cosmic background noise, but as she filtered out the noise and recalibrated, the pattern emerged. It was deliberate, a repeating sequence of pulses, unlike anything she'd ever seen. By the time the signal had been verified by other observatories across Earth and Luna, the global scientific community was in a frenzy. But what puzzled them most wasn't just the signal's complexity, it was the fact that it seemed to carry instructions. Despite its advanced nature, the encoding appeared almost approachable. It was as if the architects of the signal hadn't considered that any species outside their own might be capable of deciphering it. 3 months later, humanity answered. The spacecraft, christened Intrepid Dawn, wasn't humanity's finest, but it was fast, durable, and cobbled together with the collective ingenuity of Earth's best minds, equipped with an experimental drive system reverse-engineered from scraps of alien technology found in the Oort cloud decades prior. It was the first ship capable of reaching the origin of the signal within a human lifetime. Captain Aaron Blake had been chosen to lead the mission, a seasoned astronaut with a reputation for handling the unknown. Blake stood on the bridge of the Intrepid Dawn, staring at the swirling stars outside the viewport. Approaching the source of the signal, his navigator announced. Distance? Blake asked. 0.3 light-years, will be in visual range in 5 minutes. Blake's heart pounded. He'd spent his entire career preparing for moments like this, the kind of discovery that would redefine humanity's place in the cosmos. The Triandron hegemony hadn't sent anyone to retrieve the signal. Why would they? In their arrogance, they assumed no lesser species could ever stumble upon it, much less respond. When the Intrepid Dawn arrived at the source, the crew found a massive, ancient satellite, hovering silently in the void. It was a marvel of alien engineering, its metallic surface shimmering with an otherworldly sheen. The ship's AI, Artemis, initiated scans. Captain, the structure contains advanced quantum processors. The signal originates from a central core. Permission to interface? Blake hesitated. Do it. As Artemis connected to the satellite, a torrent of data flooded the ship's systems. The crew scrambled to make sense of it. Maps of distant star systems, fragments of alien language, and, most alarming, records of war. This isn't just a beacon, muttered Drive Marquez, who had joined the mission to oversee first contact protocols. It's a repository, a command post. Blake frowned. For what? Before she could answer, the ship's alarms blared. Unbeknownst to the humans, their response to the signal had activated a dormant failsafe. The satellite emitted a secondary pulse, this one far more powerful. It raced through the galaxy, a cosmic flare that awakened long-slumbering Triandron warships buried in asteroid fields and orbiting forgotten planets. Within hours, the first of these ships arrived. The Intrepid Dawn was dwarfed by the alien vessel, its sleek, obsidian hull bristling with weaponry. The Triandrons were a formidable species, 7-foot-tall humanoids with crystalline skin and glowing eyes that radiated an unsettling intelligence. A hologram flickered to life on the Intrepid Dawn's bridge. Who dares intrude on the domain of the hegemony? The alien demanded in a voice that resonated like shattering glass. Blake stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. We're humans, from Earth. We detected your signal and came to investigate. The Triandron's crystalline face contorted in what might have been disdain. You were not meant to hear it. Your kind is irrelevant. Blake squared his shoulders. Irrelevant or not, we're here, and we're not leaving. The alien tilted its head, intrigued by the defiance. You've tampered with things beyond your comprehension. The signal was a call to arms, a rallying point for our fleets. By activating it, you've made yourselves targets. Marquez stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. We didn't come looking for war, but if you think we'll back down, you've underestimated us. The alien paused, studying them. Perhaps, it said finally, perhaps not. In the days that followed, humanity's resilience surprised even the Triandrons. The humans deciphered more of the satellite's data, unlocking secrets that had been buried for millennia. And as tensions simmered, it became clear that humanity's arrival was no accident. The signal wasn't meant for them, but their response had altered the course of history. For the first time in eons, the Triandrons faced a species that wouldn't cower, wouldn't flee. Humanity had answered the call, and the galaxy would never be the same. The signal wasn't meant for humans, but they answered anyway. Part 2. The hologram of the Triandron captain flickered and then stabilized. Its crystalline features were unreadable, alien in a way that defied comparison to anything Earth had ever encountered. Yet, something in the tone of its voice hinted at curiosity. "You claim not to seek war," the captain said, "yet you intrude where you do not belong. Why?" Blake glanced at Marquez, then back to the hologram. He took a step closer, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. "We came because we heard the signal. We came because we could." A low, humming vibration emanated from the alien. Was it laughter? Frustration? Blake wasn't sure. "You misunderstand," it said. The signal was not a question, it was an answer, a declaration, and by responding, you have invited yourselves into a conflict far beyond your capabilities. Blake exhaled slowly, his mind racing. They couldn't leave, not without learning more, but provoking these aliens could mean the end of their mission, and perhaps humanity itself. "We're not here to interfere," Blake said carefully, "but if this conflict you speak of threatens us, then we have every right to understand it." Marquez worked frantically at her station, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The data streaming from the satellite was dense, but bits and pieces were starting to make sense. "Their war," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. It wasn't just territorial, it was ideological, a battle over how the galaxy should be governed. Blake overheard her. "And where do we fit into that?" Marquez frowned, her brow furrowed. "We're the wild card, the unplanned variable. By responding, we've disrupted whatever balance existed, and now," she trailed off, her eyes widening. "Now what?" Blake demanded. Marquez looked up, her face pale. The signal didn't just wake them, it woke their enemies too. The ship's AI, Artemis, chimed in. "Captain, multiple vessels are approaching at high velocity. Based on their energy signatures, they are not Triandron in origin." Blake's stomach sank. On screen, the view screen shifted, displaying a fleet of jagged, asymmetrical ships. Unlike the sleek, crystalline design of the Triandron vessel, these ships looked like they had been torn from the depths of a nightmare, dark, bristling with spikes, and pulsating with a faint red glow. Marquez whispered the name she had deciphered from the satellite's data, the Malthran. The arrival of the Malthran fleet shifted the atmosphere aboard the Intrepid Dawn. The Triandron captain's hologram shimmered with a new intensity. "You've brought them here," it accused, its voice sharp and grating. Blake held his ground. "We didn't bring anyone. If they're here, it's because of your signal." The alien's crystalline eyes seemed to narrow. "Your species is reckless, foolish, and now, you've endangered more than yourselves." "Enough," Blake snapped, surprising even himself. "We may be new to this, but we're not helpless. If you want to fight, go ahead, but don't blame us for a war you couldn't finish." The Triandron paused, its gaze piercing. "You truly do not understand what you've done." "No," Blake said, his voice steady, "but we're ready to learn." The Malthran ships didn't wait. They opened fire without warning, beams of crimson energy slicing through the void. The Triandron vessel moved with precision, its sleek hull shimmering as it deflected the attacks with energy shields. The Intrepid Dawn was caught in the crossfire. Blake barked orders, and the crew scrambled to power up their own shields, a patchwork system that barely held against the first volley. "Captain," Artemis reported, "our defenses will not withstand prolonged engagement." Blake clenched his jaw. "Then we'd better find another way." Marquez worked feverishly, her eyes locked on the streams of alien data. The satellite, she said suddenly, it's more than just a relay, it's a weapon. Blake turned to her, his expression grim. Can we use it? I think so, she replied, but it's risky. If I'm wrong, it could destroy us instead. Blake didn't hesitate. Do it. The satellite's dormant systems roared to life as Marquez activated its core. Energy surged through the structure, sending out waves of light that rippled across the battlefield. The Triandrons and Malthran both hesitated, their ships pulling back as the satellite's power grew. What are you doing? The Triandron captain demanded. Leveling the playing field, Blake said. The satellite unleashed a massive pulse, a shockwave that disabled the weapons of every ship in range. The battlefield fell silent, the only sound the faint hum of the satellite's core. Blake stepped forward, addressing both the Triandron and Malthran captains. We didn't come here to start a war, he said, but if you're going to drag us into one, know this: humanity won't back down. You may think we're irrelevant, but we're here now, and we're not going anywhere. The Triandron captain stared at him, its expression unreadable. Finally, it spoke. Perhaps you are not as primitive as we believed. The Malthran captain's hologram flickered to life, its voice a guttural growl. This is not over. Blake smiled grimly. It never is. As the alien fleets retreated, the intrepid Dawn floated in the silence of space. Humanity had made its mark, and the galaxy would never forget. The signal wasn't meant for humans, but they answered anyway. Part 3. The crew of the intrepid Dawn worked in tense silence. The satellite, now pulsing with an eerie blue light, loomed above them like a silent sentinel. It had temporarily neutralized the alien fleets, but its energy levels were rapidly diminishing. They had bought time, but only just. Captain Blake stood at the center of the bridge, staring at the holographic display of the surrounding system. Triandron and Malthran ships hovered at the edges of the blast radius, their weapons offline but their engines active. They're regrouping, Artemis announced, her voice calm but firm. When the satellite's pulse dissipates, they'll resume hostilities, and this time, we won't be able to stop them. Blake rubbed his temples. Options? Drive. Marquez turned from her console, her expression grim. We need to figure out what's powering that satellite. If we can stabilize it or redirect its energy, we might have a chance to keep them at bay, or even force them to leave the system entirely. That's a big if, Doctor, Blake said. It's all we've got, she replied. Down in the engineering bay, Lieutenant Zaro Okoye and her team worked tirelessly to interface with the alien technology. The satellite's design was unlike anything they had ever seen. Its systems a blend of hyper-advanced quantum processors and strange organic components that seemed to pulse with life. Artemis, can you make sense of this? Okoye asked, wiping sweat from her brow. The AI's voice responded through the comms. I'm attempting to interpret the satellite's power systems, but they operate on principles beyond human understanding. However, I've identified a central node that appears to regulate its energy output. Okoye frowned. And what happens if we tamper with it? Unknown, Artemis replied. There is a significant risk of destabilizing the satellite entirely. Okoye sighed. Figures. Meanwhile, on the bridge, another hologram appeared, this time unprompted. The Triandron captain's crystalline visage flickered into view. You have shown yourselves to be resourceful, human, it said, its tone laced with reluctant respect. But resourcefulness alone will not save you. The Malthran will not stop, and your species is ill-equipped for sustained conflict with powers such as ours. Blake's jaw tightened. We've faced long odds before, Captain. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, it's our ability to adapt. The Triandron tilted its head, as if considering his words. You claim adaptability, prove it. Blake raised an eyebrow. What are you proposing? The Malthran are our ancient enemies, but we despise unnecessary chaos. If you can ensure the satellite's energy disrupts only their fleet, we will withdraw. However, if you fail, the Triandron's eyes glinted ominously, you will face us both. Blake ended the transmission and turned to Marquez. You heard them. Can we do it? Marquez hesitated. It's possible. The satellite's energy matrix is modular, It could theoretically be redirected to target specific signatures, but I'd need the Triandrons to provide us with their energy profile so we can exclude them. Blake smirked. Think they'll hand over that kind of data? Not willingly, Marquez replied. Blake activated the comms. Triandron vessel, this is Captain Blake. If you want us to spare your fleet, we need your energy signature. Send it now, or we'll have no choice but to treat you the same as the Malthran. A long silence followed. Finally, the Triandron captain's voice came through. Very well, do not make us regret this. Armed with the data, Marquez and Okoye worked together to reconfigure the satellite's systems. The process was painstaking, every adjustment requiring delicate calibration. All the while, the Malthran ships edged closer, their weapons beginning to come back online. We're running out of time, Blake said, his voice taut. Okoye's voice crackled over the comms. Just a few more minutes, Captain. You've got to, Blake replied. Finally, Marquez gave a triumphant shout. It's ready, we can target just the Malthran fleet. Blake nodded. Do it. The satellite flared to life once more, its blue light intensifying into a blinding pulse. Beams of energy shot out, striking the Malthran ships with surgical precision. Their engines sputtered and died, their weapon systems fried. The Triandron vessel remained untouched. The Malthran fleet was crippled, their ships drifting helplessly in the void. The Triandron captain's hologram appeared one last time. You have fulfilled your end of the bargain, it said. Know this, human, you have earned a measure of respect from the Triandron hegemony, but do not mistake respect for friendship. Should our paths cross again, it may not end so peacefully. Blake met its gaze. We'll take our chances. The hologram vanished, and the Triandron ship disappeared into hyperspace. As the intrepid Dawn prepared to leave the system, Blake stood on the bridge, watching the satellite grow smaller in the distance. Captain, Marquez said, approaching him, we've made contact with 2 alien species and walked away in one piece. That's incredible. Blake nodded. It is, but it's also just the beginning. The signal may not have been meant for humanity, but their response had changed everything. And somewhere out there, the galaxy was waiting.